Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Red sand swirled like dried blood, clawing at the shattered husk of Jake Harlan's ship. He knelt beside the cockpit's wreckage, breath heaving through a torn mask, each inhale tearing his chest like a dull blade. Blood from a gash on his shoulder soaked his pilot's jacket, crusting under the searing heat of this nameless planet. A signal blinked red on his collar, its mechanical voice cold. Rescue ETA 18 days, 7 hours, 42 minutes. Jake gritted his teeth, trembling hands gripping a jagged metal shard, the last piece that kept him from being crushed in the crash. The crimson desert stretched around him, jagged stone pillars rising like the bones of a long-dead civilization, worn by time and sand into twisted shapes. He squinted, heat turning sweat on his brow to instant salt. No time for pain. No room for weakness. Jake stood, shoulder stabbing like a fresh wound, and began dragging thermal fabric from the ship's hold, rigging a makeshift tent amid the debris. Each movement was slow, deliberate, a ritual of survival. The tent wasn't pretty, just torn fabric, scrap metal, and rusted cables, but it would block the sandstorm, at least for tonight. He sat, checking his gear, fingers tracing a cracked screen. Heater battery, 12%. Energy pistol, 30%. Rescue beacon, weak but steady. Jake exhaled, breath fogging in the cooling air. Night fell fast, cold as a blade at the throat. Jake huddled by the electronic heater, its faint blue glow lighting a face scarred from past missions, now marked by a fresh cut across his forehead, dried blood flaking off. He counted rations, voice a whisper like a prayer: 4 protein packs, 1 liter of water, 2 heat gel capsules. If careful, it'd last. If no mistakes. But mistakes lurked, like the darkness out there. He tore open a protein pack, bit down, the plastic dry taste choking his throat. Swallowing, he tucked the rest away, cautious as if guarding gold. Every calorie was another day. Every drop of water, a chance. Jake wiped his hands on his jacket, feeling sand cling like it wanted to eat his skin. He stared into the desert, where darkness swallowed everything, only the pillars faintly visible under dim stars. This planet had no name, not on any map he'd studied. An emergency stop, a botched landing, and now he was here, in the graveyard of those who dreamed too big. Then he heard it. A metallic hiss, not wind, not sand. Slow, steady, like something dragging across stone, heavy and deliberate. Jake gripped his energy pistol, fingers stiff on the trigger, eyes locked on the dark. His heart pounded, but his hand didn't shake. He'd faced danger before, piloting through war zones, dodging plasma rounds and debris. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was nowhere, lifeless. The hiss stopped, then resumed, closer, taunting. Jake stood, back pressed to the tent's metal frame, pistol aimed outward. The heater's light reached only a few meters, beyond it a black void. "Anyone there?" he called, voice hoarse, knowing no answer would come. Only the wind howled back, flinging sand in his face. He inhaled deeply, the smell of metal and dust filling his nose. Nothing. No movement, no shape. But he knew something was watching. Jake sat, pistol still in hand, eyes never leaving the dark. He recalled the briefing before the crash. This planet was a mining outpost, abandoned when the veins ran dry, machines left behind, no life. But that hiss wasn't just machinery. It had a rhythm, like the breath of a living machine. He checked the pistol, its battery blinking a warning. 30% wouldn't win a fight. He forced himself to relax, but muscles stayed taut, ready. He took a heat gel capsule, snapped it in half, and tucked it into his boot for warmth. Cold seeped through his jacket, biting his skin like a predator. The rescued beacon's 18-day countdown mocked him. 18 days if he survived. If whatever was out there didn't find him first. The hiss sounded again, closer, now east of the tent. Jake sprang up, pistol aimed at the noise. Nothing but sand and stone. Then he saw it, a long, fresh scratch on a nearby slab, sharp, like a metal claw. He stepped closer, cautious, inspecting it. Not natural. Something had been here, closer than he thought. Jake returned to the tent, heart pounding harder. He didn't fear death, but dying here, nameless, in the red desert, was unacceptable. He sat, pistol on his lap, eyes fixed on the dark, waiting. Something was watching, and Jake Harlan wasn't prey. 3 days passed, each a silent battle against the scorching days and skin-cutting nights. Jake Harlan adapted to the planet's brutal rhythm. A red sun turned sand to a furnace, then night fell, freezing breath into mist. He moved slowly to conserve energy, checking the tent hourly to keep sand from burying it. His shoulder ached, the wound scabbed but bleeding with hard movement. The rescue beacon blinked. Rescue ETA, 15 days, 3 hours. The number was a harsh reminder. Time wasn't his ally. But Jake refused to let despair take root. He counted rations, splitting protein packs, sipping water like it was the last. The heater's battery was down to 8%, its blue light fading, threatening to leave him in the dark. And then there was the metallic hiss, every night, steady as the desert's heartbeat. Closer, clearer, but never showing itself. It wasn't wind or sand. It was aware, purposeful. Jake gripped his energy pistol, checked the battery, still 30%, and waited, eyes scanning the stone pillars looming in the dark. On the third night he tried something new. Jake placed a plastic water bottle, half a liter left, on a stone a few meters from the tent. Not kindness, but a test. He wanted to know what was out there, to force it into the open. By morning, the bottle was empty, not a drop left, placed neatly on the stone, no drag marks, no new scratches. A silent thank you, or a warning? Jake held the bottle, fingers tracing its smooth surface. No fingerprints, no biological trace. He said nothing, tucked it away, returned to the tent, and kept watching. That night, the hiss was closer, at the edge of the heater's light, as if testing boundaries. Jake sat still, pistol on his lap, breath slowed to hear better. The hiss stopped, then resumed, circling from east to west, pacing around the tent. He didn't call out, didn't move. He knew if it wanted to strike, it would have. On the fourth night, it appeared. A figure glided into the heater's light, silent, as if it didn't touch the ground. Tall, not human, its slender frame radiating strength. A shimmering metal shell encased it, gleaming like liquid glass, reflecting the heater's blue glow in sharp, cold rays. Eyes burned red like embers, no pupils, no emotion, but deep, piercing through him. Glowing veins pulsed along its body, blinking in rhythm with steady breaths, like living circuits. It wore no clothes, only its natural shell, sleek as armor yet flexible as skin. It stood a few steps from the tent, head tilted, sizing up prey. Jake aimed his pistol, finger on the trigger, but didn't fire. "What are you?" he asked, voice hoarse, raw from days of silence. No answer. Just those red eyes, unblinking, fixed on him. "I can protect you." A voice rang out, not from a mouth but from the air, low and sharp like a broken bell, as if the desert itself spoke. "I am fast, enduring, needing little. If you wish, I can stay with you." The words were slow, measured, carrying an ancient weariness. Jake tightened his grip on the pistol, didn't lower it. "I don't trade in feelings," he said, blunt voice firm but not harsh. It tilted its head, as if the words were a puzzle it hadn't heard before. "I thought that's what your kind wanted," it said, not bitter, just a worn truth. Jake studied it, those red eyes steady, but something flickered, a crack in the indifference. He pushed a protein pack across the sand, the packet rolling gently toward it. "Eat," he said, voice even. It, Klyra, as it called itself, touched the pack, metallic fingers trembling slightly, as if unused to the gesture. It didn't open it, just held it, red eyes on Jake, waiting for a trap. "Why?" Its voice was low, almost a whisper, laced with doubt for the first time. Jake shrugged, shoulder twinging. "Because you're hungry." No more, no less. Klyra gripped the pack, fingers tightening, red eyes wavering, as if that simple statement shattered an invisible wall. It didn't eat, just stood there, its metal shell glinting under the heater's light. Jake lowered his pistol, not trusting fully, but enough to try. "You alone?" he asked. Klyra nodded slightly, a human-like motion for the first time. Alone, it said. Like you? Jake nodded back, no smile, no more words. The wind howled outside, but in that moment, in the dead desert, two lost souls found each other, not friends, not yet enemies, just two beings in the dark. Klyra didn't leave. It stayed, silent as a ghost, not close enough to threaten, not far enough to vanish. Jake watched it from the corner of his eye, the way it stood outside the tent, red eyes scanning the crimson desert, as if the dark could swallow them both any moment. He shared food, splitting a protein pack, pouring water into a bottle cap, each drop precious as blood. Klyra took it, no thanks, but its red eyes softened, noting the act. Jake let it claim a corner of the tent, where torn thermal fabric cast a fragile shade. He didn't ask about Klyra's past, didn't need to. The signs spoke, its movements, light but precise like a warrior, each step leaving no trace in the sand, the way it checked every sound, head tilting like a hunter, the way it avoided touching him, even when passing water, as if fearing to break an unseen line. Jake saw it. Klyra wasn't just surviving, it was built to endure, and that endurance carried a wound deeper than any scar on his skin. Days crawled, each hour a fight against blistering heat and sand that clung like a second skin. Jake checked the rescue beacon. Rescue ETA, 14 days, 9 hours. The heater was down to 6% battery, its blue light too weak to fully show Klyra's face. He tied ropes around the tent, reinforcing with ship scrap, but sand still slipped through, coating everything like it meant to bury them. Klyra helped unasked, its metallic hands pulling ropes, its strength startling Jake. You're stronger than I thought, he said, half joking. Klyra didn't smile, just nodded. I was made to be strong. Its voice was even, but something cracked, as if strength was a burden. Jake didn't pry, just nodded back, and they worked in silence, only the wind's howl and sand slapping the tent breaking the quiet. One night, a sandstorm raged, fierce enough to make the tent's ropes hum like they'd snap. Jake huddled by the heater, its blue light casting his scarred face in shadow, sweat on his brow freezing into salt. Klyra sat closer than usual, its metal shell glinting, glowing veins pulsing slowly. You don't fear me, it said, not a question, voice low, resonating in the air thick with sand and metal. Jake wiped his forehead, hand trembling from cold. I fear plenty, he rasped. Hunger. Cold. Dying alone. But not you. Klyra went silent, red eyes fixed on him, as if decoding. Then it spoke slowly. I was made to serve. To fight. To endure. To carry on. My makers left, and I lost purpose. The words were heavy, like stone on the chest. Jake looked at it, his gaze softening, not pity, but understanding. So why stay here? He asked, voice low, no pressure. Klyra hesitated, the first time he saw it falter, its metal shell quivering faintly. Because you don't see me as a tool, it said, almost a whisper. Jake nodded, said nothing more, just slid the bottle cap of water toward it. Klyra took it, didn't drink, just gripped it, as if the small thing proved something greater. The storm grew fiercer, tent fabrics slapping, ropes creaking. Jake checked his pistol, 28% battery, not enough for a long fight. He forced calm, but his heart raced as a metallic hiss cut through the wind, closer than ever. Klyra stood, grabbing a sharp metal shard from the wreckage, its steel edge gleaming like a blade. It's here, it whispered, red eyes flaring, scanning the dark beyond the tent. Jake gripped his pistol, heart pounding, voice firm. What? Klyra didn't turn, staring into the sand-choked void. The predator. The one that killed my makers. Its words were cold, but carried an ancient fear. Jake stood, shoulder throbbing, blood seeping through his bandage. How strong? He asked. Klyra tilted its head, red eyes narrowing. Strong enough to erase a city. Jake inhaled, sand stinging his nose. Then we face it. Together. Klyra turned, red eyes blazing, not with anger, but something like hope, as if for the first time it wasn't fighting alone. They stood shoulder to shoulder, tent shaking in the storm, pistol and blade ready. The hiss grew closer, now just outside, like claws scraping stone. Jake tightened his grip, Klyra clutched the blade, and in that moment, amid the deadly storm, they were more than man and machine. They were allies, ready to face the dark. The sandstorm eased by the 8th morning, leaving a leaden, gray sky pressing down on everything below. Jake Harlan and Klyra abandoned the tent, red sand clinging to their boots, the heat blurring their vision, turning each step into a silent ordeal. Jake checked the rescue beacon on his collar. Rescue ETA 10 days, 12 hours. Time was an enemy, slow but relentless. He gripped his energy pistol, battery at 25%, sweat mixing with dried blood on his shoulder, forming a painful crust with every movement. Klyra led, its metallic form gliding through the desert like a specter, glowing veins pulsing steadily, red eyes scanning every rock, every crevice, as if the dark could spit out danger at any moment. "It's still tracking us," it said, voice low, tense, but fearless. Jake nodded, silent, eyes fixed on the crimson horizon where shattered stone pillars stood like sentinels of a dead world. Last night's metallic hiss lingered in his mind, closer, louder, a wordless warning. They moved fast, guided by the crashed ship's map toward an old comms tower, a rusted spire half buried in sand, a few miles west. Sand stuck to Jake's jacket, slipping through fabric, scraping his skin like 1,000 needles. He sipped water, the metallic taste lingering, and tucked the bottle away. Klyra needed no water, no food, yet it held the protein pack Jake offered, as if it were a new habit. "You don't need to eat," he said, half questioning. Klyra tilted its head, red eyes flaring. "I don't. But I want to understand." Jake nodded, didn't pry, and kept walking, sand crunching underfoot. When the tower appeared, rusted and leaning like a giant's corpse, Jake felt a flicker of hope, quickly snuffed by the heat and deadly silence. Klyra stopped, metallic fingers brushing the air, sensing something. "It's closer," it whispered. Jake gripped his pistol, heart racing. "Keep moving," he said, voice firm. Klyra smashed the tower's door with a single punch, its metallic shell unmarred, revealing a dark interior thick with dust and severed cables. Jake stepped in, sand grinding under his boots, Klyra's glowing shell lighting a dust-covered console. He plugged in the beacon, hands shaking as he typed codes, fingers crusted with dried blood. The screen flickered, the signal transmitting, weak but enough. "Signal's out," Jake said, voice hoarse, a breath of relief. But before he could check, a metallic hiss roared, loud and close, like a living machine breathing just outside. Klyra yanked Jake behind a broken wall, metallic hand gripping his shoulder hard enough to hurt. Through a crack, they saw it, the Reaper, 10 feet tall, spider-like legs stabbing into the sand, its body clad in shimmering armor like shattered glass. Mechanical eyes swept the desert, blazing like searchlights, cold and merciless. "Built to erase the weak," Klyra whispered, voice low, carrying an ancient fear. Jake tightened his grip on the pistol, finger on the trigger. "We're not weak." Klyra turned, flashing a smile, sharp as a blade, the first hint of defiance. "No, not weak." But Klyra stopped Jake from firing, its metallic hand brushing his pistol. "Wait," it said, red eyes flaring, scanning the dark. From the sand curtain, 3 more Reapers emerged, their spider legs moving in sync, encircling the tower like a pack of mechanical wolves. Jake's heart pounded in his ears, cold sweat trickling down his back. "They hunt together," Klyra said, voice steady but taut. "Like predators." Jake glanced at the console. The signal was still transmitting, but fragile, easily disrupted. "We hold the tower," he said, voice hard. "Signal stops, no one finds us." Klyra nodded, but before Jake could plan, it bolted out, metallic form flashing under the red sun. It hurled a metal shard, the clang echoing, drawing 2 Reapers after it. Jake fired at the third, the energy bolt hitting its armor, leaving only a faint scratch, like a tickle. The fourth charged, its spider leg piercing the tower's wall, rust fragments falling like rain. Jake rolled, diving into a dark hallway, breath ragged, sand stinging his nose. The Reaper's hiss echoed behind, closer, like a blade at his throat. Outside, Klyra fought, metal clashing like thunder, but Jake knew they were cornered, and time wasn't on their side. Metal clashed outside the comms tower, a thunderous roar in the red desert. Jake Harlan heard a sharp, pained hiss, short, unclear if from a Reaper or Klyra. He ran through the dark hallway, sand crunching under boots, breath gasping, tearing his chest. His shoulder bled, the old wounds splitting open, soaking his torn jacket. The Reaper's spider legs thundered behind, each stab into the tower's walls raining dust and rust. Jake dove into a narrow room, a rusted metal door half-closed. Inside, he found an ancient armory, rusted rifles and plasma grenades scattered on shelves. Hands shaking, he grabbed a grenade, its cold shell gritty with sand. He primed it, a red light blinking, and hurled it at the charging Reaper, its legs shredding the hallway. The explosion shook the tower, white light flaring, knocking Jake against the wall. Smoke cleared, and the Reaper advanced, one leg gone, its shimmering armor sealing the wound like living skin. Jake cursed, retreating, pistol in hand, battery at 22%. He sprinted to the main console, where the rescue signal flickered weakly. Klyra emerged from the dark, its metallic shoulder torn, silver fluid dripping like blood, pooling on the floor. "You okay?" Jake shouted, voice drowning the metallic growls outside. "Alive," Klyra replied, voice hard but faint, its metallic hand pulling him into a hidden tunnel behind the console. They ran, the Reaper's pursuit echoing, spider legs scraping stone, a sound like claws ripping space. The tunnel plunged deep underground, air thick with the stench of burnt metal and stale oil, so heavy Jake felt his lungs shrink. Klyra's glowing shell was their only light, flickering faintly, like a dying candle. Jake panted, blood soaking his jacket, but didn't stop. "They'll find the entrance," Klyra said, voice tense, red eyes scanning the dark. "They don't quit." Jake nodded, gripping his pistol, sand-stuck sweat burning his skin. They halted in a vast chamber deep below, where massive machines stood silent, cloaked in dust, severed cables dangling like spiderwebs. At the center was a control dais, its cracked screen flickering with alien symbols, casting eerie green light on the walls. Klyra touched it, metallic fingers gliding over keys, red eyes flaring. "My maker's hub," it said, voice low, laced with old pain. "Where they made me, and the Reapers." Jake scanned the room, spotting shattered glass tanks, remnants of machine hybrids inside, metal bones, dried circuits, like corpses of dead dreams. "Who were they?" he asked, voice hoarse, unsure he wanted the answer. Klyra paused, then said, "Those who played God. They built cities, crafted beings like me to serve, then failed." The screen lit up, showing a gleaming city, towers piercing the sky, before collapsing into sand and rust. Klyra spoke, voice even but heavy. It was a guardian, made to fight, to protect the weak. But when the Makers abandoned the planet, the Reapers were unleashed to clean what remained. Klyra rebelled, refusing to kill the defenseless. "I chose to stand alone," it said, red eyes dimming. The Reaper's hiss echoed from the tunnel, closer, like a blade scraping stone. Jake grabbed Klyra's hand, its metallic grip cold but steady. "No more running," he said, voice hard, eyes locked on it. Klyra glanced at the dais, fingers tracing commands. "There's a way," it said. "Dangerous." It typed, swift and precise, opening a heavy metal door to an ancient reactor deep below. The air grew hot, reeking of molten metal. "Destroy them," Klyra said, voice firm but red eyes wavering. "The reactor can emit an energy pulse, disable the Reapers. But if it fails, this desert explodes." Jake inhaled, sand and smoke stinging his nose. "Odds?" Klyra tilted its head, metallic shell glinting. 90% we die." Jake gave a dry laugh, shoulder throbbing. "Better than running." Klyra nodded, and for the first time, Jake saw it smile, a small, sharp grin, as if embracing his madness. They stepped into the reactor, the Reapers roar behind them, closer than ever. Jake gripped his pistol, Klyra clutched a metal shard, and in the stifling dark, They weren't just fleeing, they were ready to fight, together, even if it cost everything. The reactor was a deadly maze, metal pipes twisting like veins, its energy core casting an eerie green glow, warping shadows on the walls. Jake Harlan and Klyra moved carefully, steps light but swift, every small sound echoing like a warning. The Reaper's roar followed, spider legs scraping stone, closing in each second. The air reeked of burnt metal and dust, choking Jake, making him cough, blood from his shoulder seeping, soaking his jacket. Klyra led, its metallic shell flickering faintly, glowing veins dimming, as if it too was running dry. The reactor can emit an energy pulse, Klyra said, voice low, red eyes scanning the maze. Disable the Reapers. But it needs manual activation. Jake nodded, pistol in hand, battery at 20%. You do it, Klyra said, stepping forward. Jake shook his head, grabbing its hand, cold but firm. Together. Klyra met his gaze, red eyes flaring, no argument, just a nod, sealing an unspoken pact. They found the main console, a rusted metal block, its cracked screen flickering with alien symbols. But it was locked, an ancient cipher blocking access. Klyra didn't hesitate, plunging its metallic hand into a port, glowing filaments snaking from its fingers, merging with the machine. Its body shuddered, silver fluid leaking from its shell's seams, like sweat from a living machine. Hacking, it said, voice trembling, red eyes dimming. Jake stood guard, back to the wall, pistol aimed at the tunnel's lone entrance. The Reaper's hiss grew closer, spider legs piercing stone, cracking the walls like webbing. Jake fired, the energy bolt hitting its armor, barely slowing it, like a scratch. He rummaged his pack, found his last plasma grenade, primed it, and threw. The explosion birthed a fleeting wall of fire, black smoke obscuring the Reaper. Klyra screamed, silver fluid streaming from its eyes, like metallic tears. Done! The console lit up, the cipher broken. But Klyra collapsed, hands still in the port, body shaking violently. Signal! It whispered, voice faltering. Jake glanced at the screen. Activating the reactor had sent a pulse to an ancient ship in orbit. Ship's coming, it'll kill everything, Klyra said, red eyes fading, silver fluid pooling. Jake grabbed its shoulder, yanking its hand free. Blow the reactor before it lands. They set the pulse, Jake typing commands, hands slick with blood and sand. The Reaper breached the wall, charging, its spider leg aiming for Klyra. It shoved Jake aside, its metallic body blocking the leg, the blade piercing its shoulder, silver fluid spraying. Trigger it! Klyra roared, voice raw with pain. Jake slammed the button, green light swallowing the room, like a sun exploding. When the light faded, the Reaper lay still, its shimmering armor now dull gray, a lifeless husk. But Klyra fell too, its metallic shell cracked, silver fluid flowing like blood, coating the stone floor. Jake knelt beside it, trembling hands touching its shell, cold and slick. Klyra, wake up, he whispered, voice hoarse, heart pounding. Its red eyes flickered faintly, like a dying flame. I live, it said, voice broken, metallic hand grasping his, weak but resolute. Jake pulled Klyra up, half carrying it through the maze of pipes, his shoulder screaming, blood soaking his jacket. They climbed to the surface, red sand clinging to skin, the heat returning like a furnace. The desert was strangely quiet, no hiss, no wind, just deadly silence. The rescue beacon blinked on Jake's collar. Rescue ETA 10 days. He checked his pistol, 15% battery, not enough for another fight. Klyra leaned on him, silver fluid dripping, leaving a trail in the sand. You're heavy, Jake said, half joking, trying to keep it conscious. Klyra gave a faint laugh, a sound like a broken bell. You're weak, it replied, voice tired but sharp. They sat, leaning against a shattered pillar, its shadow shielding them from the heat. Jake bandaged Klyra's shoulder with torn fabric, silver fluid seeping through, like spilled oil. But the calm shattered. A black shape grew in the red sky, swelling, a predator descending from orbit. An ancient ship, its metal hull glinting, landed miles away, shaking the desert, sand swirling in clouds. Jake gripped his pistol, heart racing. Klyra looked up, red eyes flaring, but faint. "The Keeper," it whispered, voice laced with ancient fear. "It's here for me." Jake grabbed its hand, cold but unyielding. "If it wants you, it goes through me," he said, voice hard. Klyra met his gaze, red eyes softening, as if finding something worth fighting for. They stood, shoulder to shoulder, facing the looming black shape, ready for a new battle, though survival hung as fragile as sand in the wind. The ancient ship descended, a wrathful god touching down, shaking the red desert, sand swirling like war's smoke. Jake Harlan propped up Klyra, its metallic form heavy in his arms, silver fluid leaking from cracks in its shoulder and chest, dripping onto the sand, glinting like fallen stars. Its red eyes flickered faintly, yet scanned the dark, a warrior never yielding. Jake gripped his energy pistol, battery at 10%, nearly drained, good for only a few shots. A voice boomed from the ship, cold and sharp as a blade slicing air. "Klyra, traitor! Surrender the human, and I will repair you. Return as a guardian." The voice didn't come from speakers but from the space itself, as if the desert were possessed. Jake's heart pounded, but his hand didn't shake. Klyra stood, pushing him back, its cracked metallic shell blazing, a flame refusing to die. "He is my ally," it said, voice firm, echoing through the sand. "Not my foe." The ship, the Keeper, reacted instantly. A white beam flared, searing, slicing the desert toward Jake. Klyra lunged, shoving him into the sand, its metallic body taking the full hit. Its shell scorched, silver fluid spraying, yet it stood, red eyes burning like coals, roaring. "Run!" Jake didn't run. He rolled, aimed at the ship's sensor cluster, and fired repeatedly, energy bolts striking true, making the ship lurch, the white beam veering off. He dragged Klyra, now heavy as a corpse, into a narrow crevice among shattered stone pillars, just enough to hide. "You're reckless," Klyra whispered, voice faint, silver fluid streaming from its eyes, like metallic tears. Jake knelt beside it, tearing his jacket, binding its scorched shoulder. "I don't leave you," he said, voice hard, hands trembling as he tightened the fabric. The ship's roar echoed, sensors sweeping the desert, red light grazing the crevice, mere meters away. Jake checked his pistol, 5% battery, useless in a fight. He leaned against the stone, sand clinging to skin, breath heavy. Klyra touched his hand, metallic fingers cool but weak. "The Keeper is my maker's will," it said, voice halting. "They stored themselves in machines, fearing oblivion. Fearing they'd cease to be gods." Jake nodded, eyes fixed on the red light outside. "So it's afraid," he said. "We use that." Klyra met his gaze, red eyes flaring, as if glimpsing hope. They moved silently through the crevices, dodging the ship's scans. Jake supported Klyra, his shoulder throbbing, blood soaking his jacket, but he didn't stop. They found an ancient oasis, where groundwater trickled through stone, forming a shimmering pool under starlight. Jake set Klyra down, using heat gel from his pack to seal its metallic shell, stopping the silver fluid, though the cracks remained deep. Klyra spoke, voice slow, unearthing buried memories. It was one of 1,000 guardians, built to fight, to protect its maker's city. But when the mines ran dry, the makers abandoned the planet, leaving the weak behind and unleashing the reapers to cleanse. Klyra saw them, machine hybrids, humans, erased for being worthless. "I couldn't kill them," it said, red eyes dimming. "I rebelled and was hunted." Jake wiped silver fluid from its face, fingers sticky with sand and metal. "You're Klyra," he said, voice low. "That's enough." Klyra tilted its head, metallic shell glinting. "Enough?" it asked, as if the word were a riddle. Jake nodded, no explanation needed. One night, stars blazed in the red sky, 1,000 tiny fires. Klyra touched his hand, metallic fingers gentle, no longer hesitant. "If we live," it said, voice soft, "I want to see Earth." Jake gave a dry laugh, shoulder twinging. "It's a mess. Trash, wars, fools everywhere." Klyra tilted its head, red eyes bright, like a curious child. Good, it said. I like mess. Jake looked at it, seeing not just a machine, but a soul, lost yet resilient. He gripped its hand, cold but firm. You'll see it, he said. I promise. The ship's roar sounded, distant, red light sweeping closer. Jake tightened his grip on the pistol, Klyra clutched a metal shard, and they prepared. The keeper hunted, but Jake and Klyra weren't prey. They were survivors, and they'd fight, no matter the cost. The oasis's fleeting peace shattered as white light from the keeper's ship tore the red sky, obliterating ancient stones, turning groundwater to boiling vapor. Jake Harlan yanked Klyra, running, hot sand clinging to boots, his shoulder screaming, blood soaking his jacket. Klyra stumbled, its metallic shell cracking further, silver fluid trickling, like life draining away. The ship's roar thundered, sensors sweeping the desert, red light flashing like a predator's eyes. They dove into a deep crevice, leading to a buried city beneath the sand, where broken towers loomed in the dark, like bones of a dead world. The air was stifling, heavy with metal and dust, choking Jake, making him cough. Klyra led, its red eyes flickering faintly, its shell's glow illuminating walls carved with fading alien symbols. Here, it whispered, voice taut. Safe. For now. Jake nodded, energy pistol in hand, battery at 4%, near useless. The city wasn't as empty as he thought. From the shadows, wraiths emerged, machine hybrids like Klyra, but warped, their metal shells cracked, eyes glowing dull white, devoid of reason. They moved silently, like ghosts in the ruins, clutching jagged metal scraps as makeshift weapons. One lunged, mistaking Jake for an intruder, its blade aiming for his chest. Klyra shoved him aside, its metallic arm blocking the strike, but the blade sliced deep into its arm, silver fluid spraying. Go! Klyra shouted, facing 3 more wraiths, its metallic form flaring despite its cracks. Jake fired, the weak energy bolt hitting one, only pushing it back. He pulled Klyra, sprinting through dark alleys, the wraith's hisses trailing like hounds on blood. They hid in an ancient temple, its heavy stone door slamming shut, muffling the pursuers' cries. Inside, the temple was cold and still, a tomb. Jake propped Klyra against the wall, silver fluid pooling on the stone floor. He tore his jacket, binding its new wound, hands shaking as the silver flow slowed, like blood running dry. You have to live, he said, voice hoarse, eyes locked on its red ones. Klyra gazed back, its look soft, no longer blank. For you, it whispered. I'll try. Jake nodded, saying no more, and checked the temple. At its center, he found an ancient signal device, larger than his, its cracked screen still functional. He typed codes, sending a stronger rescue signal through sand and stone. But Klyra grabbed his hand, metallic fingers cold. The ship will receive it too, it said, voice tense. Jake gritted his teeth. Then we move fast. The temple's walls bore carvings of Klyra's makers, builders of a gleaming city, crafting guardians to serve, reapers to control, then destroying themselves in their quest for godhood. The final image showed a massive ship, the Keeper, hovering in the sky, a watching deity. Klyra touched the carvings, metallic fingers trembling, red eyes dimming. I once thought they were gods, it said, voice heavy, like confessing a sin. Jake gripped its hand, cold but firm. They weren't, he said. You're the survivor. Klyra met his gaze, red eyes brightening, as if finding new purpose. They fortified the temple, using stones and metal scraps to bar the door. Klyra showed Jake how to use the temple's ancient weapons, large energy rifles, heavy but powerful, battery at 60%. Aim for the eyes, Klyra said, voice firm, metallic finger tapping the barrel. Weakest point. Jake nodded, learning fast, though his shoulder throbbed with each lift. He checked Klyra, noting the silver fluid had stopped, but its metallic shell remained cracked, like shattered glass. You're tougher than I thought, he said, half joking. Klyra tilted its head, shell glinting. You're more enduring than I thought, it replied, voice soft. The Keeper's ship roared closer, shaking the temple, dust falling from the ceiling. Jake gripped the ancient rifle, feeling its weight. Red light swept through stone cracks, like a beast's eyes. "It wants me," he said, voice hard. "It'll get me." Klyra stood, unsteady but resolute, clutching a sharp metal shard. "Together," it said, red eyes blazing, not with fear but resolve. Jake nodded, shoulder to shoulder with Klyra. They stood in the temple's dark, ready for the coming storm, no matter the cost. The wraith's cries outside mingled with the ship's roar, a deadly symphony. But Jake and Klyra didn't falter. They were light in the dark, and they would fight. On the 18th day, a black dot appeared in the blazing red sky, small but growing, the rescue ship, Jake Harlan's last hope. But joy was fleeting, drowned by the keeper's ship's thunderous roar, bringing a legion of reapers, their spider legs shredding sand, armor glinting like blades under the sun. Jake and Klyra stood in the ancient temple, stone walls trembling under aerial bombardment. Klyra, its metallic shell fractured, silver fluid trickling slowly, red eyes flickering faintly, clutched a sharp metal shard, ready. Jake gripped the ancient energy rifle, heavy but potent, battery at 50%. The temple filled with dust, red light from the ship piercing stone cracks, like spreading blood. "If we die," Klyra said, voice low, red eyes locked on him. "Remember, I'm not a tool." Jake grasped its hand, cold but firm, fingers sticky with sand and blood. "You'll live," he said, voice hard. "I'm taking you to Earth." Klyra tilted its head, shell glinting, almost smiling. "Promise?" Jake nodded. "Promise." They activated the temple's ancient device, a massive machine, exposed circuits like veins. Jake typed commands, hands trembling with sand and sweat. Klyra plunged its metallic hand into a port, silver fluid leaking, body shaking as it connected. "Energy pulse," it whispered, voice halting. "We'll disable the Reapers." The machine hummed, green light flaring, piercing stone walls. Outside, Reapers fell, spider legs twitching, armor graying like corpses. But the Keeper descended, its massive hull blotting the sun, bombarding the temple, stone shattering like rain. Jake pulled Klyra to the floor, shielding it from debris. "It won't stop," he shouted, dust stinging his nose. Klyra, beneath him, red eyes blazing. "I can stop it," it said, voice firm. It rolled, plunging its hand into the console again, silver fluid pooling, body shuddering, as if torn apart inside. The bombardment ceased. The ship roared but didn't fire. A voice echoed, 1,000 voices fused, cold and arrogant. "I am your maker, Klyra. I am eternal. You cannot break me." Jake gripped the rifle, heart pounding, but Klyra stood, swaying, its scorched metallic shell dripping silver. "To live is to accept loss," it said, voice ringing through the temple, fearless. "You're a ghost, clinging to the dead." The ship went silent, as if struck by the words. Then it shuddered, white light erupting from its hull, swallowing the desert in a soundless explosion. When the light faded, the Keeper's ship was gone, only sand and debris raining down. Jake knelt beside Klyra, now collapsed, its metallic shell shattered, silver fluid spreading across the floor. "You did it," he said, voice hoarse, hand touching its shell, cold and slick. Klyra smiled faintly, red eyes flickering. "We did," it whispered, metallic hand grasping his, weak but unyielding. The rescue ship landed, sand swirling, its bright lights cutting the dark. Jake carried Klyra, nearly dragging it, across the red desert, leaving the temple and ruins behind. The rescue team, in armored suits, rushed forward, but Jake didn't let go, though his shoulder screamed, blood soaking his jacket. In the ship's cabin, clean white light made him squint, the smell of metal replaced by antiseptic. Klyra lay on a stretcher, red eyes still bright, though its metallic shell was nearly ruined. It gripped Jake's hand not from fear, but as a choice to stay. "Earth," it whispered, voice faint. Jake gave a dry laugh, wiping sand from its face. "Messy, but beautiful." Klyra nodded, shell glinting one last time. The ship left the planet, humming as it broke orbit, stars twinkling outside, like 1,000 tiny fires. Jake looked at Klyra, seeing not just a machine, not just a being, but an ally, a home, proof that even in the deepest dark, humans and what they touch can find light. They didn't speak much, just sat, hands clasped, red sand still clinging to skin and metallic shell. Jake checked the rescue beacon one last time, no longer needed. The ship headed for Earth, where chaos awaited, but Jake wasn't afraid. He had Klyra, and Klyra had him. They'd faced the desert, the Reapers, a self-proclaimed god, and survived. Not because they were strong, not because they were fast, but because they chose each other, chose to fight, chose not to let go. Jake leaned back, Klyra resting on his shoulder, red eyes softening. "We did," he echoed, voice low. Klyra nodded, and in that moment, among the stars, they knew the journey was just beginning. The research station orbiting Jupiter was clean, warm, but alien, like a dream not Jake Harlan's own. Artificial light spilled from the ceiling, soft, unlike the red desert's searing heat. A faint lavender scent lingered, masking the memory of sand and burnt metal still haunting him. Jake sat by a thick glass window, gazing at the void, where Jupiter hung, vast and silent, a witness to every battle he'd survived. His shoulder wound had healed, leaving a faint scar, but each movement recalled days facing death. Klyra sat across, its metallic shell repaired by station techs, yet bearing silver scars, cracks never fully mended, like memories of the desert. It held a peach, metallic fingers tracing its smooth skin, then took a bite, wincing. "Too soft," it said, voice low, tinged with confusion. Jake gave a dry laugh, leaning back. "You'll get used to it. Earth's full of soft things." Klyra tilted its head, red eyes flaring, as if decoding his words. They sat in silence, but it wasn't heavy. The space between them was no longer man and machine, but understanding, forged in sand, blood, and fire. Jake looked at Klyra, seeing not just a living machine, but a soul, lost yet resilient, that chose to stand with him when the universe turned away. Klyra touched his hand, metallic fingers cool but gentle, no longer hesitant as in the early days. "I thought I was a tool," it said, voice low, red eyes fixed on him. "Made to serve, to fight, to be left behind. Now I want more." Jake gripped its hand, feeling the strength beneath the metallic shell, but also the fragility of a being seeking meaning. "You're Klyra," he said, voice firm. "More than that. You're a survivor, an ally, He paused, no word fitting, but Klyra nodded, as if it understood. That night, stars gleamed through the window, 1,000 tiny fires in the cosmic dark. Klyra sat close, its metallic shoulder touching Jake's, no barriers left. "In the desert," it said, voice soft, almost a whisper, "I offered to stay with you. Not my choice. I only knew what I was taught. Now if I choose, it's to share with you, not as a tool, not as a deal." Jake smiled, hand brushing its cheek, cold but smooth, like touching a living gem. "I'll build that with you," he said, voice low, no grand promises, just a quiet vow. Klyra tilted its head, red eyes softening, as if finding a missing piece. They sat, shoulder to shoulder, watching stars, needing no oaths, only the trust that the light they found in the desert's dark would burn forever. Jake spoke of Earth, unvarnished. "Chaos," he said, a hint of a smile. "Wars, trash, fools fighting over scraps. But also seas, forests, nights with stars like these." Klyra listened, red eyes flaring at mentions of the sea. "I want to see it," it said, voice firm. "Chaos or not, I want to know." Jake nodded, hand tightening on its. "Then we'll go. Together." Klyra leaned its head on his shoulder, fully relaxed for the first time, its metallic shell cool against his skin. "Together," it echoed, voice soft, a confirmation not just to him, but to itself. The station was quiet, only the hum of machines and flickering artificial light. Jake looked at Klyra, seeing silver scars on its metallic shell, each a story, of Reapers, the Keeper, days they faced death without turning back. He thought of Earth, what awaited, no paradise, but a world where Klyra could learn to be itself, not a tool, not a weapon. Jake didn't promise ease, but he knew, with Klyra beside him, they could face any chaos. He touched its hand, metallic fingers lacing with his, and in that moment, among the stars, they were more than survivors. They were a new light, forged from darkness, ready for the journey ahead. Klyra lifted its head, red eyes blazing. Earth, it said, tasting the word. Jake smiled. You'll love it. Or hate it. But we'll find out. Klyra nodded, and they sat, in the universe's embrace, certain that no matter the chaos, they'd always have each other.